Welcome back. Now, on Friday, the United Nations celebrated International Women's Day. The National Assembly also celebrated women in a debate with the theme, The Gender Agenda Gaining Momentum. The debate was introduced by the Deputy Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Ms. Mabuloko Kubayi. She dedicated her speech to all women who've been able to walk away from an abusive relationship despite their socio-economic status. She said more should be done to empower women in the economy.
Social and political factors have a significant influence on women's ability to participate in the economy. These include access to family planning, other healthcare facility services, social protection coverages, girls' completion of quality post-primary education, improving literacy rates of adult women, and increasing women's influence in governance structures and political decision-making. Many of these dimensions are mutually dependent and reinforcing. Honorable members, only 38% of South African established businesses are women-owned. Despite the potential contribution of women to economic development, South African women remain on the outskirts of the economy, dominating the informal economy. Female representation in the top echelons of business lags far behind. The trends in South Africa are mixed. The Business Women Association, which produced the Women in Census report, showed that only 16% of all directors in South Africa in 2011 were women. And this was a slight increase from 7% which we had in 2004.
Mike Waters of the Democratic Alliance said although South Africa has the most progressive constitution in the world in which equality of all citizens is guaranteed, gender equality is still just a dream for many. He then lashed out at the Minister of Women, Children and People with Disabilities.
Much more work has to be done, and the recent spate of brutal rapes and murders across our country is proof of this. Although we have excellent legislation in place, women in all four corners of our country, and especially those in rural areas, still struggle to access these rights. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women report in 2011 revealed that while some women have gained a measure of equality with men, and while some women no longer experience discrimination in the family, there are some who still face untold discrimination in their families, the workplace, communities and societies as a whole. Chair, what we need is a champion of women's rights to give the gender agenda momentum. We need a minister that is leading the way in gender equality. While South Africa grapples with the rape crisis, the Minister of Women, Children and Persons with Disabilities is in New York again. Her argument that she is there on business will be cold comfort to the millions of vulnerable South Africans who need help here at home. The Minister's allergy to hard work is well documented. She is hardly in Parliament for key debates, and she cannot spend her budget on items that fulfill her mandate.
Deirdre Carter of COPE said as we celebrate International Women's Day, South Africans should acknowledge that government has failed to respect, protect, promote and fulfill women's rights as enshrined in the Bill of Rights.
In South Africa, 144 women report rape to police every day. The Medical Research Council has found that 1 in 25 women in Gauteng actually reports rape. That means, to the Honourable Minister sitting here, that means that if an estimated rape of 3,600 per day is correct, 144 will be reported, and only how many will be convicted? 29 out of 3,600. What is the reason for this underreporting? Is it that insensitive questions asked in gathering information from the humiliating examinations, intimidation, the lack of confidence or even fear in our police service, the low conviction rate? Speaker, how are we protecting women against verbal and mental abuse? Verbal and mental abuse cannot be examined, but the mental scars will remain there for life.
The IFP called for a national return to core family values and respect for women. Ms. Constance Zikalala said violence against women is not unique to South Africa nor Africa, but rather it's a worldwide degenerative social scourge.
The Ingata Freedom Party therefore calls upon every person in this country. We call for a national return to core family values, values that build strong families, values that anchored respect for our women, our children, and our elderly, values that are the very foundational building blocks of the moral generation of South Africa. We call upon the men of South Africa to be men, and real men do not rape. This is a task we cannot and dare not fail. This is a solemn and sacred call to action in defense of our women. I thank you.
Although women are present in the highest echelons, their numbers are far from equal to those of men. Men still dominate leadership and decision-making positions. We need to do more to ensure that women have an equal voice in decision-making, both in government and in the private sector, more especially in projects that affect our lives, our communities, and our country. The gender agenda achievement is also dwarfed by the shocking levels of violence against women and children in South Africa. We must deal harshly with those who beat up our women, rape them, and abuse our children.
The ACDP calls on government to provide greater support to NGOs who are doing so much work for the betterment of women and South Africa as a whole. Agencies report a tension over funding between NGOs and social development that needs to be resolved because it impacts on people in need who are suffering. Many NGOs previously funded from overseas are getting less and less, and they get no funding from government. At the same time, social development concentrates on child offenders, while most offenders are adults, and they are receiving inadequate attention. Momentum is only good if it moves us in the direction that we should be going.
For centuries, now men and women have been advocating for gender equality in our homes, in our churches, in the workplace. Yet, in year 2013, we still have a theme that suggests that gender equality is only just starting to gather momentum. I'm disturbed because this suggestion is so true. You only need to watch the next news bulletin, whether national or international, to know what we have made little progress in ensuring that the gender agenda is well entrenched in our systems. I do think and believe that men and women are equally created in God's image, equally responsible for sin, equally redeemed by Christ, equally responsible for the use of their God in giving talents and gifts. Any interpretation of scripture that prohibits women from being fully human constitutes injustice and must be judged and seen as an abuse of power.
Let's make the pertinent call and commitment to improve young people's access to quality health care, build educational equality for pregnant and parenting teens, and improve access to prenatal care and treatment for substance use in pregnant women. Furthermore, ensure that women of color, low-income women have access to all birthing options, defend reproductive rights, and build reproductive justice. It's time for action to end violence against women. Let's work for it to happen. Women are deliberately likely to face discrimination in every field of science, engineering, and medical professions. Peace should be cultivated within each family, and indeed, if men want to be as strong as women are, then first let's begin to respect women.
Let's take a break. A view from the House will continue in a moment. Do stay with us.